Here's a question. Hi, Pastor Gene. Could you teach about tithing? Does it apply to the church? I've heard some teachings that church should not give tithes because it only applies to the Israelites in Old Testament, where there were still priests, where they still had priests, but the church teach that we should give tithes and offering. I do not question about giving or supporting local church, but tithing makes think if this is really applicable. Malachi 3:10 is a verse always used. By the way, I'm from the Philippines and I'm new to your channel. Hi, from San Jose, and it's flooding over here. I hope the weather's fine over there. All right, here's the answer. So let's look at Malachi 3:10 through 12. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, and prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it. Now, these tithes, what you're going to understand, it is true. This passage in Malachi, you'll notice right here, you receive this prosperity, right? You gain this prosperity when you give tithes. But the problem is this. So it is true. This passage is not for Christians. It is for Jews. Because if you look up that word tithes for the Jews, look at Leviticus 27. Leviticus 27 and verse 30. You're going to notice right here that this tithes has nothing to do with Christian money today. It's rather the livestock and fruits of the lands that the Jews owned. So you notice that time period was very different. That's what the tithe was. Look at Leviticus 27 verse 30. And all the tithe of the what? Land. Whether it be the fruit of the tree. You'll notice verse 32, and concerning the tithe of the herd or of the flock. See, livestock. Even whatsoever passeth under the rod, the tenth shall be holy unto the Lord. So there's your verse that tithe means tenth. But you notice it has to do with Jews' livestock and fruits, not money. In fact, that's why it makes sense if you look at Malachi 3, if you think that verse applies to you, why did that verse says bring the tithe to the storehouse? See, because it was literally a storehouse for the livestock and fruit. It wasn't for money for Christians today.
Amen.
So we do not believe, like prosperity gospel preachers, make sure you give a tithe, make sure you give a tithe, otherwise you won't be rich. We don't believe in that. That's only for Jews. However, we do believe in tithing. We just don't believe Malachi 3 part of tithing. We do believe in tithing. Let's look at 2 Corinthians 8. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Why do we believe in tithing? So there are hyper-dispensationalists who do not teach tithing. And unfortunately, a lot of Christians are falling into that mess. So you got to be careful of that. Now, they do believe in supporting local church, but they do not believe Christians give a tenth, see, tithe, of what they give to the Lord. Actually, we really believe in that. We really believe in giving. Actually, it's not just a tithe, but the best that you've got to the Lord. That's what we believe. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 8. We're going to look at verse 1. Moreover, brethren, we do you to it of the what? What grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. What's this grace that Christians are to be aware of? That's giving money. That's literally giving money. Because look at right here, how that in a great trial of affliction and abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their what? Liberality. This is no doubt talking about giving money. So that's tied into the grace of God. Now, notice what Paul says. Therefore, as ye abound in everything in faith and utterance and knowledge and in all diligence and in your love to us, see that ye what? Abound in this grace also. So here's the thing. Christians are to abound. See, that verse says abound in that grace. And what's that grace? It's money. It is literally money or your riches. That's what it is. That's 2 Corinthians 8, 1 and 2, and verse 7. Now, here's something that you've got to understand. This is why we believe in tithing, but even more than tithing. Because if you look at Romans chapter 7 or Romans chapter 6, Paul talks so much about people under the law and people under grace. So if you're familiar with those chapters, you'll notice that. Now, here's the thing. People under grace have much more to gain compared to people under the law, right? If you look at Romans 6, 7, and 8, that is true. The law was much, much weaker compared to grace. If you look at Romans, I believe 6, for example, it says, where sin abounded, grace did much more abound, and the law was the one who gave sin. So you'll notice that the law, which gave sin, was smaller in comparison to grace. Grace was much, much more than the law. So here's the point. If Christians under God's grace gain so much more than the Jews under the law, don't we owe so much more than a tithe to the Lord? Yes, we certainly do. Amen. So that's why we believe in tithing, because you know why? It should be more than tithing. That's why we call it minimum. That's why we call it minimum. That's why your pastor here, when he gets his salary, he gives a tithe or sometimes even more than a tithe. I mean, what about my living situation and all that? God will provide. Amen. Because I have so much more to owe Jesus Christ under grace compared to the law. So here's the thing, here's the dangerous thing, is that some hyper-dispensationalists, they do believe in giving or supporting local church, but they do not believe in tithe. But we believe in tithe, because what we believe is more than that. It's just the bare minimum. We give more than a tithe. But what we don't believe in is that when you tithe, you gain all this prosperity of Malachi 3. That is only given under the law. That was all Jewish.